What's going on, guys? My name is Mr. Hurricane, and I'm bringing it back. NFL Offseason Talk is here. I did videos about NFL offseason stories and free agent moves and trades and just my thoughts last year, and I missed it. I wanted to bring it back. I did some things during the season, but I don't really want to do those again. I talked about, predictions for matchups and recaps, so I don't want to do that. I'd rather talk about stories, and so we're just a few days away from free agency in the NFL. It begins on, I have it written down here, 4 p.m. Eastern, Tuesday, March 12th. So next week on Tuesday, we're going to see the flooding of free agents flying all over the place so they can go to new teams, and that's going to be really exciting for us NFL fans that are waiting for the NFL draft now, which is under 50 days to go until the draft. But I'm going to be doing these videos hopefully on a pretty frequent basis, but I'm not going to value this over my regular series. So we're going to begin this series this year by talking about wide receivers. In my opinion, with the receivers in this free agent class, there's a lot more to kind of look at with the notable names and such. And so you look at the big names, and you're like, wow, each one of these guys comes with maybe a high price tag and a bit of a risk. I mean, the top overall free agent at wide receiver, in my opinion, I'm not counting restricted free agents, by the way, because those guys, it's a whole different situation with restricted free agents. So like Victor Cruz, Nario Alexander, those guys are on a different boat. But I'm going to say the number one available receiver for me is Greg Jennings. And the risk for Jennings, of course, is that he was out last year half the year. He only played 8 regular season games, 2 postseason games, but when he plays, he can be a number one receiver. Of course, he was great in Green Bay. I've seen him play plenty of games because I'm a Vikings fan and I watch a lot of Packer games as well. And when he's in the game, you know what you're going to get. But still, he's going to be 30 years old soon, and I don't think the price tag, I've been reading somewhere around like 10, 12 plus million a year, and I'm like, I don't think I would go that high. And so when I look at these receivers, I relate their situation to it, whether I'd want them on my Minnesota Vikings. And Greg Jennings, I love him as a receiver, but for that cap number and that salary, I'm not sure if it would be worth it. And plus, the Vikings are a team that wants to build through the draft, so I doubt they would take a 29, about to be 30-year-old receiver. If they were going to, they should have last year when Vincent Jackson was available, and he went for $11 million a season. And speaking of Vincent Jackson money, I wanted to go and talk about Mike Wallace now, because in my opinion, here's like one of the 2 most overrated players in this entire free agent class. I would say Mike Wallace and Cliff Averill are 1-2. And Mike Wallace, he's a speed guy. He's a deep threat that can burn, but you ain't Randy Moss in his prime, baby. Okay, so you look at Mike Wallace's production last year. It dropped off after he held out, played 15 games, amassed 836 yards and 8 touchdowns. He's a valuable guy. He can stretch the field. Those guys open up the underneath running game and the passing game to the tight ends. They're valuable even when they're not catching the football. But I think Wallace, I think he's just asking for too much. I mean, I don't see him the way I saw Randy Moss when he was mainly a deep threat that didn't do anything else for the Vikings. He was still incredibly valuable. And so at the end of the day, I still think someone's going to overpay for Mike Wallace because they're going to get into some bidding war with another team, and the team's going to need a receiver very badly, just like the Miami Dolphins. They have cap room, especially if they don't bring back Jake Long, and they're going to have the money to bring in Mike Wallace. And to me, he deserves more like a Pierre Garcon contract, and likewise, Pierre Garcon's a deep threat guy, and Garcon got $42.5 million last year for 5 years, or $8.4 million a year. That's more realistic. He's not Vincent Jackson value, and he doesn't impact the game like a Vincent Jackson, in my opinion. And now the next guy I think that's going to get overpaid is Wes Welker, and from what I'm reading now, it looks like he's not going to be going back to the New England Patriots, but Patriots fans, don't worry. I wouldn't worry if I were you, because I think that slot role he plays is very replaceable, because it's a position that requires a small, shifty guy that can get yards after the catch and can have good hands to make those catches. I mean, it's a short passing game the Patriots like to run, and I think that's a very replaceable role, and I would not pay a guy more than $10 million to do that job. So I think actually a replaceable candidate is another free agent. If the Rams don't retain Danny Amendola, I could definitely see him going to New England. But I think the Rams, they want to keep around some of their free agents they have this year. They have 2 free agents of note, which is Brandon Gibson, a guy who's kind of under the radar for me, and I think could definitely be a candidate to go to Minnesota, perhaps. But they have Danny Amendola. Chris Givens broke out last year, and Brian Quick was the wrong decision at 33 overall last year, first off. I don't understand that at all, especially when they had like Stephen Hill on the board. But they're probably going to end up keeping at least one of those guys. I would not be surprised if it's two, but if they don't want to pay Danny Amendola, I'm not sure what he'll command. I could definitely see him going somewhere like New England to make, I don't know, like $6 to $8 million a season or something like that. I'm no expert when it comes to contracts, but I have to give my best guess. I'd say that's kind of around his value. And let me go down my list here. Randy Moss. He's done in San Francisco now, and I think we're going to see him maybe one more shot with another team. He'll be lucky to make it out of training camp, I think. And Randy's one of those guys, you know exactly what you're going to get out of him. He can stretch the field, but he may not do a whole lot else for you with blocking and doing something outside of you throwing him the ball and him catching it. He's not going to do a whole lot else. Going down the list, Brian Hartline. I kind of wanted him to go to Minnesota, but it looks like he's deep into contract talks with Miami, and they're going to keep Hartline, who had a great start to the season last year and didn't fall off, but he did cool down after having a pretty good season. Ted Ginn Jr. had more catches than yards, 2 receptions for 1 yard, and we all know his value is at returners. So anybody who needs a cheap returner can definitely get Ted Ginn, and he can be a 4 or a 5 receiver that can stretch the field and work the slot. We got Ramses Barden, Kevin Ogletree, and Donald Jones, and I put these guys into my under-the-radar category, and I didn't realize this actually, but I knew Ramses Barden had that one good game last year when Hakeem Nicks was hurt. It was Thursday Night Football against Carolina. I watched this game, and I'm like, how do they keep getting receivers out of nowhere that can contribute in this way? But that was the only noteworthy game Ramses Barden played all year, so maybe that was the 15 minutes of fame for his career, but we'll go down the list. Kevin Ogletree, this is an interesting guy. He had that breakout game in Week 1 against the New York Giants where he had 2 touchdowns, and he was like a popular guy to pick up on the fantasy waiver wires that week. And he finished the year with 32 catches, 436 yards, and 4 scores. But the one stat that kind of stood out to me was that he only was targeted 56 times, yet caught 32 of those balls. And so I think that if someone can get Kevin Ogletree and he's like your 3rd or 4th best receiver, then you're in a good position. But if you're trying to make him a number 2 guy, and I don't think anyone's naive enough to make him number 1, but if he's your number 2 guy, I think you're definitely in the wrong spot. But if he's your 3rd or 4th best receiver, that's a decent depth option. And then Donald Jones, I think that he's going to go somewhere and possibly battle for a number 2 spot, or he could return to Buffalo as well. But that's basically the main free agents I'm looking at here at wide receiver. There's, of course, a lot more on the list that I didn't talk about really, like Steve Smith, which is not the Carolina Steve Smith. I usually call this guy Steve Smith Giants, but he doesn't play for them anymore. He plays for the Rams. And Stevie Breston's another one as well that I've been reading about recently, about possibly going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, of course, Titus Young has been waived by the St. Louis Rams after being waived by the Detroit Lions. He's a free agent if anybody wants Titus Young. I wouldn't. I hope you wouldn't either. But anyways, guys, that's going to bring this first off-season video of mine to an end. Be sure to leave your comments and feedback in the comment section below about your thoughts on these receivers, where you think some of these receivers are going to go, where they're potential good fits. And also, let me know what you want me to talk about next. I want to do more of these stories. They're a lot of fun to do. I love talking about football. I can talk about it all day. And speaking of talking about it all day, follow me on Twitter, and I'll talk football with you. I do it all the time with people. And you can also recommend me topics to talk about in these videos on Twitter. So anyways, guys, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like and support the off-season videos that are returning once again after a short hiatus. But anyways, guys, I'll be back with definitely more soon. Free agency is only in a few days. So thank you for watching, guys. I'll see you later.